Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer. I'm your host, Sarah Bueno. I'm a psychotherapist, teacher, consultant, and most importantly, a wounded healer living and working in Chicago, Illinois. On this show, I interview folks in a variety of healing professions, and we discuss the intersectional journey of healing self while caring for others. We're not just focused on individual healing, but also healing on the collective level from white supremacy, late-stage capitalism, and the patriarchy. Thanks for joining us. Hello, my beautiful friends. How are you doing today? I'm good. Question mark. It's a gray day and it's been gray and rainy this week in Chicago, so it's not that exciting. At any rate, you don't give a shit about the weather. Let's talk about something interesting. So I listened to this podcast, Sounds Like a Cult, and it's really fun. It's cute. It's poppy. You know, they talk about different organizations and people and concepts and essentially rate whether or not they think it's a cult or not. And not too long ago, they had an episode about the cult of Instagram therapists. And of course, I feel immediately attacked and must listen to hear all the terrible things that they say about me. They're not talking about me. So I listened to the podcast with the ear, obviously, of a therapist who engages on Instagram. And I also listened with the ear of a person who seeks mental health support. And what I took away from it is pretty much one of the things that I've been preaching all along is that we have to be in relationship with our power. So in this podcast episode, and I highly recommend you listen to not just that episode, but all of them because they're very interesting. You know, they talk about one specific psychotherapist who has gotten a lot of followers and gives a lot of advice, and it is a problem. It's a huge problem to be giving advice, you know, and that's kind of, so I'm speaking both to therapists because I know therapists listen to this podcast, but I'm also speaking to people who are not therapists because I think that there's really important information in that podcast for both of us. So if you're a therapist, I know that the trend right now is to try to come up with quick tips and cute little videos to share, you know, information about mental health. But the thing is that being mentally healthy is not quick and it's not easy. And I know that that's what people want, but that just doesn't work. And also as therapists, I think it's really, really important to recognize what we're saying and how people might be taking in what we're saying. And obviously, you know, we can't control what people do with the information that we share, but just to always have that in mind, I'm always really trying to, whenever I create a post and in this podcast, right, when I'm saying things, I'm really trying to think about, you know, the ways that people might take things wrong. And, you know, I'm not trying to like please the haters, but I want to be responsible enough to recognize that some folks might not understand what I'm talking about and might take it in a way and use that information to harm themselves. You know, it's really, really hard because we're in an age right now where if you're not on Instagram or you don't have a podcast, right? If you're not putting yourself out there in that way, that people wonder like, oh, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you engaging in this? And yet I think that there's a slippery slope for us therapists who do have followings on social media and these podcasts, right? So to clients who are consumers of mental health information on social media and in real life, I guess my advice is just don't take anything like completely to heart. I mean, I have definitely seen Instagram posts that the information was like so important to me, but then I would take it to my therapist and talk about it. Or I might talk to my friends about it and I would do some more digging with it myself rather than just taking something as like, this is a truth. This is how the world is now. And I just get all my info from social media. Right. And I'm guessing that if you're listening to this, that you might already be a person who is very savvy with your consumption of media and podcasts. And Also don't get all your information in one place, right? If you are listening to me for mental health and spirituality and that sort of stuff, awesome. But I am not the end all be all. And there are probably so many other amazing podcasts and, content creators and all that out there. So, man, I don't know, let's just be cool. That's a terrible summary of this, but it's a really complex situation. So at any rate, whether you're a therapist or not, go listen to, sounds like a cult, the Cult of Instagram Therapists, and judge for yourself, and let me know what you think. And you can let me know what you think by following me on Instagram. See, it's a fucking vicious cycle. We just can't win. So we're not going to try to win today. We're just going to have an amazing conversation with an amazing guest. So today's guest is Caitlin Olsen. Caitlin is a trained therapist, mental health coach, and lifelong Mormon. She runs group programs, creates self-paced courses, and works one-on-one with incredible coaching clients under her business, Caitlin Olsen Co. Her mission is to destigmatize mental health care, change some family trees for the better, and bring mental health to the forefront of Mormonism. So please enjoy my wonderful, so fascinating conversation with the lovely Caitlin Olsen. I cannot believe it, but Conversations with a Wounded Healer is turning 5 years old this month, and we're nearing our 200th episode. If you've been with me for a while, you know this podcast has been an instrumental part of my own healing journey. And now I'd love to hear how it's been a part of yours. For our 200th episode, I'd love to include your voice as well. Go to speak-2.us/convos with a wounded healer and leave me up to a 60-second voicemail about how this podcast has impacted you. For our 200th episode in November, I'll include your message in our episode. That again is speak-to.us/convos with a wounded healer. I can't wait to hear from you. Hello, Caitlin. Welcome to Conversations with a Wounded Healer.
Hi, Sarah. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I feel like I say that the exact same way every time. I probably need a new opener.
It's not a bad thing, right?
I
Consistency.
guess. Yeah. I'm very consistent. It's really kind of terrible. Anyway, less about me, more about you. Hi.
Hi. Hello.
See, people think, I don't know, I don't prepare very well for podcasts. I just like to jump in. So let's first talk about how we know each other, because that was a super fun experience.
Sure.
You want to share?
Yeah, we met in Annie, the Rebel Therapist Mastermind, Annie Schussler, back, in March, right? For 8 months or
March
so.
2021.
Yeah. And that was fun, right? I loved that mastermind. I still do.
Yeah. So it was you, me, Courtney, and Maureen, who has all those folks, and of course, Annie Schussler that were guests on the podcast, and then a smattering of other folks that I'm sure will be on here at some point too.
Yeah, it was a really solid group. I loved everybody in there.
Yeah. Well, let's start first with where you are now, and then we're going to go back into the past. So tell people what you're doing right now. What's your jam?
So I'm a mental health coach, and I am based out of Northern California. I am new to both of those things. I was working primarily as a licensed marriage and family therapist for years. And then at the end of 2021, let that license go and switched full-time to coaching. And mid-2020 is when I and my husband and our 3 kids moved to Northern California from Las Vegas, Nevada. So lots of change, good change. And I work mostly with Mormon women. That's my niche. That's kind of the bread and butter these days.
Awesome. Cool. So, and we're going to dig into all of that as we get there. But
sure.
I guess first things first, why did you become a therapist? Tell us your origin story.
Oh, wow. So kind of the beginning part of that is I was living in Texas. My husband was in pilot training. He's in the military and didn't have a ton to do for myself. So I was substitute teaching, and I had a bachelor's degree, but it was in English. And so I didn't really have much to do with
my
that.
My husband's an English major, so I know there's nothing you can do with that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like a stepping stone, but it's definitely not a destination. And I was raised Mormon. So I was like, I guess I'll just kill time until I have kids, and then I'll be a stay-at-home mom. And that was kind of my plan, if I even can call it that. But while in Texas, my parents, who were a Mormon couple, and my mom was a stay-at-home mom. They'd done things really traditionally. My parents separated and were moving toward divorce, and they ultimately ended up staying together, and they have a really great marriage now. But when I was brand new newlywed and looking at the rest of my life and then watching my parents' marriage implode and my mom really, really struggling not only with mental health, but also just practicalities, wondering how she's going to support herself and what to do. And she had kind of done all the quote unquote right things according to Mormonism. So it hadn't worked very well for her, at least up until that point. So as I was looking at their experiences and then really struggling just as a child of their separation, a grown adult child of a marriage that was falling apart, I started going to see a therapist for the first time ever, just to cry for an hour every other week, and try to be somewhat proactive in getting through this thing that had really rocked my family of origin. And fast forward a year or so, and I'm now living in Las Vegas and thinking, okay, I'm in this big town. I can find some sort of job, again, like a time killer, but I can find some work. But it was early 2010 and Vegas was hit really, really hard by the recession and the housing bubble bursting and everything. And it was just kind of a wake-up call for me. I'm like, okay, just because I have a degree from a decent school and I've had this kind of sheltered, kind of spoiled upbringing, I just didn't have to work that hard or think that hard about where money was coming from, I kind of thought, I'll just get a great job. And then I couldn't. And so I started thinking about going back to school and looked at UNLV's website just to poke around their grad programs and stumbled upon the marriage and family therapy description, like a paragraph. And I was like, oh, yeah, that's what I want to do. And I think it was a combination of obviously my mental health experiences so far, and then knowing I wanted to do something that was meaningful, but also that I could support myself on, because my husband at the time, I had no reason to think anything was going to change between us or that he was going to bail on our marriage at any point. But, I never thought that of my dad, and he did for a while. So I wanted to have a career and I wanted it to be meaningful, and marriage and family therapy just kind of jumped off the page.
And you said that the first time you went to therapy was in your 20s. And I'm curious what the Mormon church thinks about mental health support.
Yeah. So, technically, right, they support mental health support. And if you look on the church's website, they do a decent job of just addressing the importance of getting specialist care and not counting on your spiritual leaders to help you with mental health matters. They're really clear that any sort of mental health struggles are not a sign of sin or a punishment from God, right? That's very, very explicit.
Well, that's good.
Yeah.
And that's not the same for all religions.
No, it's not. And I don't think ever formally it wasn't that from the Mormon church, but kind of informally, and then culturally it was, and it still is. And it depends on how you were raised and what kind of Mormon family you were raised in, or at what age you came across the Mormon church, that kind of stuff. But in general, I never felt oh no, this is a conflict with my religious beliefs. I was just I need help and I need to go.
And now you're not a therapist. So what was that decision process like?
It was slow but easy, if that makes sense. Part of my work with Annie and just expanding my business into coaching in general helped open up my mind, right, to the ways that I can not only be successful as a therapist, but also just be an asset as a mental health professional. And it was, again, slow. So I knew probably 18 months ago that this was something eventually I would probably do, is let my license go. And then maybe early 2021, I remember talking to Annie, I'm going to renew it this time, but it's probably the last time I'll renew my license. And at the time she was sounds like a great plan, but I'm betting she was sure you will.
Yeah.
And then I went to do the CEUs and I was I don't care about this stuff. I don't have any interest in it. I don't think this is what my clients need me to know. It feels like a waste of time. And you know how it goes. They're crammed in on the weekends. The traditional kind of arrangement is you work 5 days and then you go to 2 days of training and then you show up and work 5 days again. And it's just not something I was interested in. And I could have done it differently, but also knowing what I already knew, that I wasn't going to stay a licensed therapist much longer
Yeah.
anyway. It just kind of felt like, I don't think I want to do this. I think I'm ready to move full time into coaching. And I kind of paused there because I was thinking about how when I moved, relocated from Las Vegas to California, I did not get licensed in California. I kept my Nevada license and planned to work online full time. And that's what I was doing. And so it was kind of already built
Mm-hmm.
in, like the system, to be an
Mm-hmm.
online mental health coach was already there.
What did you feel like the constraints were for you as a therapist that you could do as a coach without a license?
So location for sure. And that's just whether I had a license or not, but being able to work with anyone anywhere became increasingly important. And then
Mm-hmm.
protecting my license felt like a constraint because even though I've worked in private practice pretty much my entire, or had worked in private practice pretty much my entire therapy career and hadn't taken insurance, I still was ending up working with insurance companies, filling
Mm.
out forms to do super bills, reimbursements, and that stuff takes time and energy, but also I know,
Mm-hmm.
to put it mildly, but
Yeah.
it just felt like the longer I did this work, the less valuable it became to try to diagnose people. And that's partly
Mm-hmm.
because of the shift in the population I was working with, but it just started to feel like kind of a made up thing that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter. And I don't mean that, I don't know, to take it too lightly, right? Because
Right.
it's important. And at the same time,
Right.
for me and for my work, and especially as I was getting clear on my niche and really narrowing down to working with Mormon women almost exclusively, it didn't matter anymore. Like they were just coming
Mm-hmm.
to me because at that point I had the experience and the approach and the training that was plenty. And I just didn't need any more from the license.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right. Because I mean, with that very specific niche, you already have everything that you need, right? Because you'd been through it. And with the foundational mental health knowledge, I mean, of course, we can always learn and grow. Yes, yes, yes. And I'm
Yes. Yeah.
sure you're not doing any
Yeah.
education. So let's just be
Yeah.
clear with the audience. Anyone
Yeah.
who's like, what? She doesn't care about. So we
Yeah.
get it.
I think it's, as you say that, I'm reminded of one of the aha moments, which was like, as I started out, I really needed the structure and the accountability of a licensing board and rules to follow. And now, 10 years down the road, I can just trust myself to do that. And instead of externally or, outsourcing that to external places, it's just something that I can gauge for myself. And that doesn't
Mhm.
mean I have no external accountability. I do. It's just
Mhm.
different and it's more personalized and customized to who I am and the work I'm doing.
And the hard piece is, I trust you to hold yourself accountable,
Yeah.
but not
Yeah.
everybody
Yeah.
has that, right? Even people who still have licenses. Like, did you listen to the Shrink Next Door or watch the show?
Yes. Oh my
Right? Like
gosh.
that
Yeah.
crazy bullshit. So everybody
Yeah.
stop what you're doing,
Yep.
listen to or watch that show, and then come back to this.
Yeah. That's
Because,
wild.
and that, I mean, yes, that's a very wild out there story, but he's not the only one that's acting
No.
that way, that
Yeah.
therapist. So like, I don't know. I don't know where the balance is for how to
Yeah.
not restrict those of us who are following the rules
Yep.
and keeping people accountable who are, I mean, honestly, it probably starts in school. Like you shouldn't be able to get the degree if you're a flaming narcissist or have a personality disorder of any sort.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yes, I'm gatekeeping, but like
Yeah.
that's just kind of not safe.
It's really, I started to kind of like realize what you're saying, right? That
Hmm.
having a license is not a guarantee for being ethically minded
Right.
or
Right.
safe as a clinician. And
Hmm.
there were a couple, over the years, we therapists, we all run across unethical, bad
Hmm.
therapists, right? And that, was kind of run of the mill and not super alarming until last spring when I had an experience with a colleague and a referral he made to me who this couple that he was best friends with. And then the guy didn't love the way I was doing things. So he went back to his friend and now he's their therapist. And I was like, this feels weird.
Oh,
You're now working with your best friends,
no.
charging them. And it just, I was kind of like, dang. And it's
Yeah.
not like me not having a license is all about that one experience, but it was
Right.
kind of, and then listening to bigger stories like the shrink knit store, it's like, oh, there's no guarantee.
Hmm.
And the closest thing I do have to any sort of guarantee when it comes to my work is me, and my
Right.
relationship with myself and my clients and the different checks and balances that I can build in my
Hmm.
business to help things stay
Hmm.
helpful and not and avoid harm.
Right. Well, for me, one of the most important ways that I continue to hold myself accountable is going to therapy and
Yeah,
doing my own work. So, do you feel that same way?
totally. Yes, 100%.
Hmm. Well, and if you are comfortable with this, and I'm guessing you are because you post about it on social media,
Yeah.
you talk about having a breakdown. Was it in 2020 or 2021? Would you tell us about your experience?
Yeah, sure. I have never thought of it as a breakdown, but yeah, you're probably right that that's what it
Oh,
was. It
sorry.
was
That's my word, not yours.
no, it was kind of like in therapy, we're like
Hmm.
breakdown is also a breakthrough, right? It's kind of a
Absolutely.
coming apart and then a rebuilding.
Hmm.
Yeah, so 2020, I think we all know 2020, it was
Hmm.
tricky. And I think I was operating on a lot of adrenaline and also a lot of
Mm.
excitement because we were moving out of Las Vegas and into Northern California. And that was a move I was really, really excited about. And the circumstances of it were more stressful than we thought just because it was
Mm.
the middle of a pandemic and we didn't get time with the people we wanted to before we moved and all of that. But
Mm.
it was exciting. I was making a change with my career because I was going fully online and working from home instead of renting office space. And the
Mhm.
house we're in, I was so excited to come here and like make it our own and meet people. All of that was just pretty energizing. And then I think, it's a series of events and a lot of factors, but I think by then we were on the third wave. I don't know, but whatever happened like late 2020 when the CDC said, like, do not travel for Thanksgiving, right? Don't
Mhm.
come together in large groups for the holidays. And, we respected those recommendations. And my dad, who's a medical doctor, was like, yeah, no, we're not all getting together at
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. And that just kind of was a brick wall a little
Mm.
bit, I think, for me. So hitting that, and then the winter was like a winter. And I say a winter, it was just kind of a little bit of a seasonal affective disorder winter,
Mhm.
which is usually, I think, would have been like a normally mild thing for me to just navigate. But I was already kind of down, so it was
Mhm.
a kick while I was down.
Yeah.
So yeah, what I've been sharing a lot about on social media lately, and I shared in the summer when I was starting to feel a little bit better, but I've been sharing about this depression that just like really took hold and suicidality that kicked
Mhm.
in a way it just never had before. And that was in the
Mm.
spring and into the summer. And then, like you mentioned earlier, therapy was really important to me for my recovery and getting into a doctor who could help me look at my medication because I've been on an antidepressant for a couple of years at that point
Mhm.
and was wondering about a switch. And we switched. And then the second one was so not the right fit, made everything worse.
No. I hate when that happens, and
Yeah.
I have been there.
Yeah. It's kind of just to help people understand where I was. I was taking this new medication and like so hopeful that it would help.
Mhm.
And I would feel okay during the day, and then I describe it as like sundowning, like when the sun went down,
Yes.
I
Me
just was
too.
yeah, isn't that wild?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I was like, "I'm okay, I'm okay, I'm okay," and then like, "I'm not okay," and then I'd wake up and be like,
Yeah.
"Okay, it's okay, it's okay," trying to kind of convince
Yes.
myself that it was working. And I sent a letter to my doctor after like 2 weeks of this, or a note, in her system, just
Mhm.
like, "I'm okay, but like just heads up, this is what I'm noticing, and
Mhm.
it's probably fine." And this was on like a Sunday evening, and Monday
Mm.
at like 9:01, I get a call from
Mm.
her nurse who's like, "The doctor wants to see you today." And I was like, "Oh,
Aw.
I think I'm fine." And she was like, "Yeah, no, she wants to see
No.
you today." I was
Oh,
like,
what a
"Okay."
wonderful doctor. That's lovely.
Yeah, she's really great, and the system is great, and that was helpful, obviously.
Mm.
So then I switched over to this medication I'm on now that's really helping. And the doctor also was like, "You know a lot, but you can't be your own therapist. Like, you gotta get back in." I was like,
Mhm.
"I
Well
know.
done, doc.
I know." Yeah,
A
she's great.
plus.
Yeah, she's really great. So then I started to kind of get my feet under me again, and
Mm.
I felt a lot better. Like, every month, I think I just feel better and better, but that
Mhm.
was a big turning point.
Mm. I relate to that so much.
Mhm.
I had my what I call a breakdown. I completely fell apart in, was it July of 2020? And then felt a lot better after I went to treatment and then came home. I still was like, I don't need medication. And I still don't really know what that is in
Mm-hmm.
me that was like, I don't need meds, because I started getting really fucking depressed and finally
Mm-hmm.
was like, I guess I do need something. And so I tell my husband, and I said this before because I was on medication, got off of it. And I told him before, don't ever let me go off of it. And he's like, okay, but he's such a pushover. He lets me do whatever I want. So now I'm like, Sarah, please fucking remember, never go
Mm-hmm.
off this again.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
yes, the feeling that would happen for me, I would just be like watching TV totally collapsed because I had no energy at the end of the night.
Yeah.
And then I would start feeling guilty as fuck and
Yeah.
thinking that everybody hated me. It was terrible every night.
It's awful. It's
Mm-hmm.
terrible. Yeah, the medication thing is weird. I mean, it
Yeah.
took me a long time to actually start, but like once I started, I was like, oh, this is like a miracle. Why would I not do this for the rest of my
Right.
life, But
Mm-hmm.
it took me years. And I know so many people, clients, even like just this week, having conversations around like, it's okay. You've tried everything else. Like you have
Mm-hmm.
worked so hard. You have
Mm-hmm.
so many resources, all these tools. This is the only thing you haven't tried. Like, why don't we just give it, experiment a little bit? And
Mm-hmm.
there's just, I don't know, stigma, taboo, but also fear because, me feeling really suicidal, like extra suicidal for
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks is not something people want
Right.
to risk, right? Want to
Right.
gamble. It's better the devil you know, right? So,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah. So I get it.
Well, I'm so glad. It's just, I love hearing stories of people who are like, I need help. And then you go get help and then you get better. I just thank you for getting help.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, you're welcome. Like
Yeah.
thank me. I'm glad, that I did that.
Right. But
Yeah.
that you're sharing this story too, and you are, I just love how honest you are on social media about it and just letting people know this. I mean, it's normal to have mental health struggles in a pandemic.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like this
Yeah.
is like, if you're not responding with some sort of trauma response, then I'm really concerned about
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. I've said that to a lot of clients. Like,
Yeah.
I would be worried if you weren't anxious or
Hmm. Hmm.
tired, or
Hmm.
depressed or scared
Hmm.
or whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Our first cohort of Wounded Healers virtual group is full. If you wanted to join but missed this opportunity, never fear. I'll be hosting the group again this summer and likely next year as well. Wounded Healers virtual group is an 8-week group for mental health professionals led by me. In this group, we will create a sacred container to support one another's healing, integrating spirituality, principles of the neuroaffective relational model, shame resilience, and liberation psychology. We'll use the chakra system as a frame for our weekly meetings. To be notified about the next cohort, go to tinyurl.com/woundedhealerwaitlist. Again, that's tinyurl.com/woundedhealerwaitlist. Well, shall we pivot into your work with Mormon women? I'm so curious to hear more about
Sure.
that.
Sure. Yeah. What do you want to know?
What do they need help with? What are you seeing?
Just like a massive generational exodus. Every
Mm,
woman that I talk to who's around my age, like mid 30s up into early 40s, don't have the faith they once did, especially those of us like
mm,
me who were raised in the church. I was raised for the most part in Utah, surrounded
mm,
by this culture for most of our formative years and have just
mm-hmm,
kind of like gone with that flow. Like it's worked for us, and
mm-hmm,
most of these women really fit the mold. They're straight and they're cisgender and they're white and they're married and got married pretty young and they have,
mm-hmm,
multiple children and most of them stay at home with those kids. Again, just like I described before, that's kind
yeah,
of the prescription, right?
mm-hmm,
And then they come into this experience of a pandemic and then really, really extreme division. And I know we're all aware of that in our country. And then
mm-hmm.
in the Mormon church, it's like just as extreme, kind of a micro version of that. And
Well, I want details about that
yeah,
because obviously
yeah,
evangelicals are for Trump, which blows my mind because he's
yeah.
clearly an evil person and Christians are saying they're behind him. So what's happening behind the scenes, that who's supporting what? What's going on?
So, this is all anecdotal, right? And just like my
Mhm.
experience, my view of
No
things.
research studies here. This is all
No.
personal information.
Yeah. It seems like over the course of what coincided, pandemic and the presidential election of 2020, like over the course of those months, March to November, there was this buildup, and slowly but surely people, especially women, and maybe that's just because that's who I'm plugged in with, but
Mhm.
Mormon people were putting their flags in their yards, and so many of them were Trump. And it really,
Mm.
at first, it feels like, okay, it's just wacky so and so, or like, okay,
Mm.
they're Republican their whole life. And the church, of course, tends Republican, like most
Right.
conservative religions do. And so you could justify it a little bit, but then
Mm.
more and more, not only were people vocally supporting this really, I don't know, scary movement, scary
Mhm.
candidate, they were getting like really abrasive,
Mm.
and confrontational for those of us who weren't. And
Mm.
it was really, and these are a lot of people that I know or have known for a long time and like loved,
Mm.
right? It's hard for me to talk about it without wanting to describe like
Mhm.
every single bit of it, because I don't want to just categorize the good Mormons and the evil Mormons. It
Of
doesn't work that
course.
way.
No. Right.
But again, in general, it was shocking to me in Las Vegas, which is a pretty conservative place, especially like my suburb, where I lived.
Which is hilarious to me.
I
I've never
know.
been to Vegas, but it's prostitution is legal, but it's
Yeah.
conservative.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
What?
Well, it was founded by Mormons. Las Vegas was founded by Mormons
What?
originally.
Wait.
It was a Mormon
What?
fort. Yeah. The history of the city is rooted in the Mormon mission effort out of Utah. So it's only 2 hours away from
Mind
St.
blown.
George, Utah, which is a very, very conservative,
Hmm.
small kind of Red Rocks town. So
Hmm.
yeah. So yeah, there's the strip, but then the rest of Vegas is really
Mm.
suburbia because there's so much work to be had there. And
Mm.
when the housing was booming, there's a ton of housing work to have. Anyway, so it's
Mm.
conservative. And then my area was really conservative Mormon and also really conservative Judaism. So it's like
Hmm.
really, really conservative from anywhere you look,
Mhm.
kind of lifestyle wise, right? But
Yeah.
then
Mhm.
politically, it just
Mm.
became this really conservative, I don't know, conglomerate kind of monster. And
Mm.
it started with people doubting that COVID existed and believing conspiracy theories. And then,
Woof.
yeah, like science isn't really a thing that people were listening to.
Right.
And one by one, I watched my friends just get lost to
Mm.
Fox News or to QAnon or to whatever it
How
was.
painful.
It was horrible. And I was also a little bit in denial because I was moving away. And so I was like,
Mm.
that's quirky and so-and-so's always been a little weird or whatever. And then
Mm.
leaving and then seeing, not experiencing them in real life and just seeing what they're posting on social media, I was like, holy crap, like
Mm.
this is not something to salvage anymore. And it would have been hard
No.
anyway because I was leaving. But I have a few friends, really close friends in Vegas who had the same experience as me and still are just like, how did we get here? And they're
Yeah.
LDS women too, Mormon women too. So I don't, to answer your question, there's no, I don't know how to exactly explain it,
Mm.
except that, okay, well, this is one way to put it. Mormonism is technically a cult, and that's not like
Mhm.
an accusation, right? They just kind of check all the
Mhm.
boxes.
Yep.
And I think Trump is his own cult, right? So
Mhm.
people who are used to that kind of
Mhm.
structure, why
Mhm.
not just kind of fall in line?
Mhm.
And it's under this umbrella of a political party that they've probably been raised to
Mhm.
just believe in. And
Mhm. Well, Reagan was
yeah,
just as terrible, but not as obvious.
exactly. He was charismatic and he was an
Right.
actor. Like he knew what he was
Right.
doing. Yeah.
Yep.
Hmm.
Mm.
So,
Wow.
and Mormonism there's a lot of emphasis on self-reliance and financial wealth. Yeah.
Oh. Well, then, duh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. That's
Yeah.
really yeah, I
There's
don't
a
know shit
whole,
about Mormonism.
well, there's a lot to know, that because there's
Mhm.
so much offered by the church to its members. And one of them is a course called self-reliance that you can take. And it's like, I think 8 weeks
Mm.
long and all these different, and one of them is
Fucking
emotional
Ayn Rand.
resilience. Yeah.
Damn it. Neil. Oh,
Yes.
man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Neoliberalism.
So,
That's the term.
yeah, a lot of
Mm,
women that have come to me over the last year and a half are just coming to me and like, I feel like the weirdest outlier in my congregation these days because I'm the only one who sees that the emperor has no clothes, right? Like, what are we
right.
doing? And
Right.
why are things moving this way? And then again, formally, the church doesn't like promote a party or a candidate. And you're not supposed to talk about
Mm-hmm.
politics when you're teaching a lesson at church or speaking from the pulpit. And yet it still comes up because there's this idea of
Mm-hmm.
collaboration where anyone can raise their hand anytime and everyone gets a turn to speak in front of everybody. And so,
What? Oh,
yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah, there aren't preachers and there are leaders. We have leaders, but it's not their paid job. They
Oh,
have day
so
jobs. Yeah, it's all volunteers.
is it like testimony kind of
Kind
like,
of.
I want to give a
Yeah.
testimony right
Yeah.
now?
Yeah. So the first Sunday of every month is
Mm.
testimony meeting. And so anyone can go up there without
Oh,
being asked.
no.
Yeah. So that's where things can get wild. And it's kind of a joke,
Oof.
right? There's testimony meeting bingo that you can play. Right. But lately
Wow.
it's gotten really, it can get, right, really
Mm,
intense. And it depends on your ward, which is the
mm,
local congregation. It depends on the tone of the bishopric, who are the leaders of that local congregation. Like in Berkeley, California, it's super liberal.
right.
And here in my area of Northern California, it's kind of rural and really conservative. But
Mm,
my bishop is really young and fairly
mm,
progressive, so it's kind of this
mm,
like various factors. Yeah. So it's interesting, I think, in general, to just look into the details of the Mormon life and the Mormon experience.
mhm.
But for a lot of women, and I think this is how I make sense of my psychic, well, breakdown. Yeah, we can call it that.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
psyche just wanting to kind of crumble in on itself last spring is
Mhm.
what a lot of women come to me with now and lately is this church that I actually really love, right? I love the religion. I
Mhm.
I am Christian. I believe in this doctrine, this gospel, and the community has always been a safe place for me because I check all those boxes. And
Mhm.
now I go in there and I feel like I'm getting
Mhm.
like I'm splitting in half or something. It's so, so hard.
Mm,
And then I feel anxious all week about the next Sunday, or I get depressed and I can't
mhm.
function. And then I feel guilty, like you were describing, because I have to fulfill all of these roles in order to be worthy enough to
Mhm.
have this eternal life that I'm promised, right?
Mhm.
It's really, really taxing. So they come in not knowing what to do. Like, I never thought I'd want to leave the church, but I'm seriously considering it. And that's its own stressor. Or my
Mm,
husband doesn't get it and we're having fights about it all the time. Or
mm,
my siblings, right, are accusing me of being in the grips of Satan. Like, these are things that are really
mm,
coming at some women. But I say we, like they, Mormon women are just like fleeing the religion
mm.
in a lot of ways.
Well, so you're still part of the church? You're still a member?
Yeah, so membership is hard to resign from. It's possible,
Mm,
but like,
mhm,
the church tracks its members and keeps track of where they live and
mhm,
all the different things they participated in the religion. So yeah, to answer that, yes, I am. And most people are until they get an attorney to get themselves off the books.
oh, okay. Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
cult. You
Yep.
shouldn't have to get a
Yep.
lawyer to. Okay.
Yep.
So, so you're not practicing. It's just the technicality, or because I guess in what you're sharing, I'm hearing something we say in the 12-step room, like principles above personality. So you
Hmm.
can love the values, that the church stands for, really, truly, right? Like
Yeah.
God's
Yeah.
word. You can love that
Yeah.
and really be turned off by the practices that are happening because of
Yeah.
the different personalities.
Yeah. I think that's a good way to conceptualize it. I still like certainly call myself a Mormon woman. I'm a member and I'm
Mhm.
I'm a believing member. And I really identify most strongly as a progressive Mormon woman.
Mhm.
That's where I am. And so compared to 2 years ago, my behaviors are a little different, day to day or week to week, but not that different. Like, I still
Mhm.
quote unquote follow a lot of the rules, and there are a lot of rules, in Mormonism.
Like what? Tell us the secret rules.
They're not like that secret, but you're not supposed to drink
Mhm.
coffee. You're not supposed to drink black
What?
tea. Yeah.
What? Just
Yeah.
like caffeine?
Well, that's so okay. Thank you. Like, this is where I think we as a religion or as a culture have gotten so lost because there's this guidance called the Word of Wisdom that kind of originated with Joseph Smith, the
Right.
founder, right? So
That
this is
dude.
like
Hmm.
almost 200 years ago. He kind of presents this idea like, let's stay away from coffee and tea. In other words, hot drinks. That's the actual verbiage
Okay.
for health reasons. And let's not smoke because we're sick of having cigarette butts all over our living room floor. And that's it. And let's not have alcohol too. So, like, those
Hmm.
are the kind of the original rules. Fast forward to now, and modern day Mormons, some of us were raised in houses that didn't allow any caffeine. Some of
Mm.
us, like me, were raised in houses where you could drink soda. And I've heard it put
Mm.
like Mormons like their caffeine cold. So a lot of Mormons will like
Mm.
have like 3 Red Bulls a day, but then are
Mm.
judging those of us or anyone else, who's drinking coffee
Coffee.
in the
Wow.
mornings. So yeah, that's an example of some of the rules. And that's an example
Hmm.
of where I think we as a religion have started to police so much about each other,
Mm.
and formally and informally,
Hmm.
and judge so much. And then people, who don't want to wear a mask because they think the pandemic is a
Mm.
conspiracy theory are still like allowed to participate and come in and like expose everyone to a
Mm.
virus, right? It's just kind of
Wow.
confusing and not
But
at
don't
all
drink
Christian.
coffee.
Yeah. Right.
Come
Exactly.
on. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And
Mm.
I have, one of the main tenets of Mormonism is modern day revelation. And so I have a lot of hope because of that. And whether I believe it's like really from God, that God's like, okay, this is the year you're allowed to drink coffee, who knows? But it's very much like it's the leadership that's going to change it when it feels right to them, and
Mm.
when they feel quote unquote inspired. And I really believe that as my generation moves up the ranks in
Mm.
those leadership roles, a lot of this is going to change, because otherwise the church is going to fall apart. Like if they can't keep up with the times,
Right.
they're going to continue to lose members and money and influence. And that will take
Mm.
another 200 years or so, right? It's just not tenable. And we can see that in the history of the church. There are
Hmm.
major changes the church has made in its policies over the last 200 years.
Hmm. Wow.
I
I would
know.
love you to just do a lecture on Mormonism. This is fascinating.
That's part of it too, is that we're not really taught. It's like any history in America. Like, we're not taught the whole history as Mormons. We don't know the
Hmm.
whole history of our church. And
Mm.
we have to go to outside sources to really get the full picture. And then we're chastised if we go to church
Right.
sources that aren't church sanctioned. So
Hmm.
I'm kind of new to it and really understanding the big picture. But there's a lot of really beautiful work being done by Mormon women. And of course, my generation isn't the first one. As long as
Hmm.
the church has been around, there's been a feminist presence in the church, and
Mm.
women saying the same things over and over again. But because women aren't tracking the history and deciding what's getting documented and what's being
Exactly.
formalized, we just have to redo it every 20 years.
Hmm. Mm. Well, it's so interesting to me the way that patriarchy, unfolds in religions like these, and just the control, the
Yeah.
absolutely anorexic control of
Yeah.
people and their decisions. And because I don't know, I believe in a God that doesn't give a shit what you eat or drink as long as you're a
Yes.
decent human
Right.
and you're
Right.
trying your best.
Yeah. Agreed. Yeah.
Mm.
So when you ask, like, am I a practicing Mormon? It depends on who you ask, but asking me, right? I would say, like, hell yeah, I'm a
Hmm.
practicing Mormon.
Hmm.
I'm practicing. Our formal name of the church is the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day
Right.
Saints. Like, I'm
Right.
showing up.
And Jesus was a radical, you
Exactly. He
guys.
was progressive. Like, progressive Mormonism is a
Mhm.
redundant term, right? It's just Mormonism.
Mm.
It's just being like Jesus was,
Mhm.
and I think wants us to be.
Mm.
I
Fascinating.
know, it's fun to talk about.
Oh, good. Well, great. But I have to ask, because we're almost out of time. I can't believe it. We should do this
Yeah.
again sometime. We've gotten now Mormonism 101. We need 102 next time, or
Okay.
201. We'll see. But do you consider yourself a healer?
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, if I'm a healer, then everyone's a healer, right? We're here to heal
Mhm.
each other. And
Mhm.
so, yes, and so are you, and so is everyone,
Mhm.
including some of public enemy number one, like former presidents that we don't like, people show up and trigger each
I don't like
other,
that.
and
I don't like it at all.
yeah, and it gives you something to explore, right? It gives you something to work with, and you don't have to like it ever, right? No one has to like anything. And I don't like it either, for what it's worth. Like, I'm not comfortable with the words that just came out of my mouth. And it is also like what I believe. I really see one of the main stories and origin stories of Mormonism is that God is up in heaven and he has two sons, Jesus and Satan. And he says, I want to create this planet and send all of these angels to be humans on this planet, and give me your plans, like pitch me your ideas to his, it reminds me of Succession, right? Like, tell me your plan. And
this would be a great remake. I love it.
And Satan's like, I know, I'll just make everyone perfect. There's no personal agency, and we'll just make everyone be perfect so they can all return back home to you. And Jesus is like, well, I don't know. I think personal agency is better. And then Satan is mad because he wants all the glory, like Kendall, right? And I don't think there's a Christ figure in the Roy family.
No,
but,
there is not. Wow.
Jesus is like, I'll do it. I'll sacrifice myself and I'll give you, God, the glory. That's the idea. And everyone views Satan as like this evil, terrible, like, oh, he was just so selfish and egotistical. And I'm like, dudes, he's the protagonist. Like, if he hadn't been there, we would have no story, right? It's like there in Les Mis, if we don't have something to rub up against, then we don't ever progress or learn anything. And holy crap, have we had a lot to rub up against over the last couple of years. So I think we're all healing and we're all healers, whether you like it or not, Sarah.
Oof. I still want to fight you on it.
We can do that.
No, I think what I want, and I don't not believe what you're saying. I think, because it makes a lot of sense, the way I want to frame it for myself, because I just I cannot say Trump is a healer, but I love the protagonist thing. I do think that we all have capacity to be healers. I think that some people make the choice to tune into that, and some people make the choice to be the protagonist. You know, like, did you read, what is it, Mary Trump's book on their family?
Not
Too Much and Never Enough.
I didn't listen to the book, but I heard her interviewed. So
yeah,
I have the
it's
gist.
Fascinating, right? And I mean, he was set up to fail in terms of being a decent person, right? I mean, talk about Succession. Like, it sounds like the Trump family itself.
Oh my gosh, 100%. Yeah.
But we do have agency, right? We have agency. And at some point we can say, I want to get out of this mess. This isn't working for me anymore. And so, because I don't know. And so many people would tell me, Sarah, pray for the people that you don't like. And when I have done that, positive things have happened, but fuck Trump.
I know. I know what you're saying. Like, if, I have a hard time praying for people that I don't like, but in that kind of same vein, I will ask for, pray for, hope for some sort of knowledge or inspiration or just trust in myself to navigate the hate in a way that's helpful and healing, first for me and then for the people that I can influence. And I spent months in rage, rage, and imagining certain faces on the punching bag in my garage, right? Like, really, it's not that I'm like, come on, don't be angry. Like, no, let's be angry. And I think there's healing in that anger, and sometimes a kind of healing that we wouldn't maybe get in other ways. And I can afford to say this, right? Because Trump being president or Reagan or whoever doesn't make or break my life, because I have that load of privilege, like, I'm going to be okay no matter what. And so I can afford to kind of be like, I'm going to use this for my own benefit and my own personal development, where some people are like, cool, I don't know how I'm going to like survive, or if I'm going to be allowed to live here, or, fill in the blank. So
I appreciate you saying that. Right. Yeah. My husband and I thought the same thing before the election. Like, our lives will not change other than the collective anxiety that crunched literally everyone.
Yeah.
But it makes sense. I mean, I'm just really holding a lot of respect for you for how you really spiritually hold this. It's really beautiful.
Thank you. It's like a constant, effort. And for a long time, it wasn't there. And I think that's the kind of thing that I hear from a lot of women. And this is how I make sense of my suicidality, is what wasn't there had to be grieved. Does that make sense?
100%.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, how about wounded healer? You one of those?
I'm wounded. Yeah. And we're all
Mm-hmm.
wounded healer. I'm one of
Mm-hmm.
you. We're all in this together. Yada, yada, yada. I don't know. Yeah. Sure.
Right. Well, you don't have to define yourself that way to be a guest on the podcast. That's a
Thank
good
you.
thing.
Cool.
Well, Caitlin, this has been so educational and entertaining and enjoyable.
Thanks, Sarah.
The
Same. Right back
three
at you.
E's. Yay. So if people want to learn more about your work, connect with you, where do you want to send them?
I will send them to Instagram. That's where I love to hang out. It's Caitlin Olsen Co. So CaitlinOlsenco.
Amazing. Is there anything that we didn't talk about today that you want to say before we go, or any tidbits of brilliance that you want to leave listeners with?
No. I think
I
that's
love that.
all.
No.
No, I don't think so. You've
I
got
am
a lot of
finished.
me. Yeah.
Oh my God, you're amazing. Well, thank you so much for spending the time and being so vulnerable. And I can only imagine that being a person who's outspoken about an organization such as the Mormon Church is, you're putting a lot on the line. So I think
Yeah.
that's really brave and really incredible.
Thank you. Yeah. There was a time where I was worried about that because there are formal disciplinary actions that could be taken and have been taken
Mm-hmm.
against members. And I just have moved somewhere
Mm-hmm.
beyond that. Just like, okay, that doesn't scare me anymore. Not that
Mm-hmm.
it wouldn't be like painful, but
Well, then you wouldn't have to hire a lawyer, right?
yeah, they just do the work for
They just
me.
kick you out. Great.
Yeah.
Perfect.
They're actually there's at least one I know of who does it for free in Salt Lake. If anyone needs
Oh.
that tidbit, there's
Oh.
my last tidbit of brilliance.
Oh, okay. Yes, that is good to know. If
Yeah.
you need a free lawyer, go for it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well, thank you again. And I'm just excited to be connected with you and
Same.
just keep doing all the amazing work you're doing.
Thanks, Sarah. You too. Thank you so much.
Oh, Caitlin, my darling, thank you so much for being such an amazing guest today. If you would love to learn more about Caitlin, you can go to our website at www.headhearttherapy.com/podcast. Thanks as always to Andrea Klunder and the Creative Imposter Studios for editing, to Liam O'Donnell for our album art, and to Ben Mueller for our theme music. Until next time, bye-bye.